Episode 2, let's do it.
Absolutely.
So
So what we're talking about today then, Callum?
we are talking about, well, newbies today. So new people to the gym, people who've never gone to the gym before, people who maybe have not gone to the gym for like 20 years and want to get back into it, which is basically like starting from scratch at that stage anyway.
I would say so.
But yeah, newbies. I mean, we've made some like prerequisite notes, and it turns out there's a hell of a lot of topics we could cover with this. So there may inevitably be a part 2 to this one.
I agree.
Probably will be, because there's just so many subcategories you can go into and a lot of specifics. But I think I think some of the notes that you made, I think we should start quite broad.
Yeah, I think so. So I think really the first thing is like, what would be, I guess, because we can look at this from two different angles. You currently work in a gym, you're a PT in a gym, so you're going to see a lot of people where it's the start of that journey for them. And for me, I've coached in the past, and I help coach some runners and things like this now. And I see people in different areas of their journey. So I guess, what are the kind of questions that you would typically get asked right at the beginning, and what sort of advice might you give people?
I think generally, people's worries are actually in the wrong place initially. So when I do say I have people for inductions or just like first time programs or whatever, I think generally a lot of the time people worry too much about the details, and with the stuff like, oh, how many reps should I be doing, how much weight should I be doing, how many sets should I be doing, what all the exercise specifics and stuff like that, where generally I always say to people, it's like the first hurdle for you in regards to the gym is going to the gym. That's the first hurdle you've got to overcome, is one, just getting here, and two, getting used to the equipment that I've shown you. But it's the first hurdle for you is just getting used to the environment, because it is a daunting environment. It just is, especially for a lot of people. I don't know if I know anyone who walks into a gym 100% confident the first time. So for the first hurdle is literally just like, say you want to start going twice a week. The first hurdle for you is just to show up twice a week. That's it. Don't worry about all the details just yet. So generally I try and backtrack people a little bit when I talk to them and just be like, don't worry about any of that stuff yet. If I'm doing the program for you anyway, even like, because we do free programming for people in the gym and stuff, it's like, we'll take that thought process out for you. So all you have to worry about is just the just getting there, and then just do whatever we've given you, pretty much.
But I think that's a really big thing, like that kind of taking the thought process out of programming. That's a massive thing. So there's one thing people don't have to think about. I think as well, one of the bits of advice that I always kind of give people is just focus on one thing at a time. So the worst thing people can do is wake up on January the 1st and go, right, today I'm going to stop smoking, drinking, I'm going to sort my diet out, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to start running. 2 weeks later, inevitably, they've completely fallen off the wagon. Pick one. And especially if you're brand new to all of this, you are going to see gains no matter what in one of those areas. All of them are going to have a positive impact on your health. But trying to juggle 5 or 6 things at one time.
You're 100% right. 100% right.
It's too much for us to do. So my advice, I mean, the extreme one there might be smoking. I would probably say to people, well, if you can stop smoking, that's probably the first thing you should do. However, smoking is probably the only one where I would say do that in conjunction with something else, because it's a distraction. Okay.
Right.
But,
okay.
But the others, I think, don't go to the gym stressing over like my calories in, calories out, etc., etc. Just go to the gym, focus on going to the gym. And exactly as you've said, like someone else is going to deal with the programming, someone else is going to do the thinking for you, and get comfortable in the environment. Because in those early stages, when you're figuring it out, I think everything is just a bonus. A week ago, you were doing nothing. This week, you're going in there and you're learning how to use the machines, for example. And I think as well, when people first join the gym, that's probably the right area that they should start off to. Like the first time you go to the gym, you probably don't want to be thinking, right, I'm going to be a bodybuilder in the next 3 months. I'm going to be a powerlifter. I think it's getting comfortable in the environment, exactly like you've just said there. Like you kind of mentioned, it is quite a daunting environment when you first start off. I think as well, to go with that is try and think about the mindset that nobody there cares about you.
Really, yeah,
Yeah,
on it, yeah, no,
yeah,
that's a big one. No one gives a shit really about what
yeah.
anyone else is doing. Really,
No,
I think there can be like, I think if anyone does think about stuff in their head about what someone else is doing, it's more just to boost their own ego anyway. Do you know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
Like it's never externalized anyway. It's
No,
all just
no,
like internal insecurity shit that people have within them.
hundred
You
percent.
know, no one really gives a fuck what anyone else is doing. You know?
No, and I think the thing to remember as well is that most of the people in that gym, even that big grunting, sweating bodybuilder guy in the corner that everybody's terrified, he's probably just as insecure as you are.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah,
Everybody underneath has their own hang-ups and their own insecurities. So if that's a really big thing. And I think for a lot of people, this is a barrier to entry. They're intimidated by the gym, they're intimidated by the people that are there. It might be another
yeah,
sport, they're intimidated for running. It's like I'm not a runner. It's like, well, if you're outside and you put one foot in front of the other and you're not walking, you're running.
you are running.
Then
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
right.
forget about everything else that goes with it. You're doing that exercise.
Yeah.
And I think this is a really, really key thing, is just forgetting what everyone else thinks about you and just doing it. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think, yeah, and you made a really good point in terms of like before, in terms of like changing habits and stuff. I've just started with a client now, and she wants to lose some weight and stuff. And I said to her, just like, I've talked to her a little bit about, obviously I'm not a nutritionist, so I can't do all that
Yeah,
great nutrition stuff. That stuff is really boring anyway. But I can't, so I can give her advice and things like that. And she outlined some of the bad habits that she has. I'm like, okay, so for like the first couple of weeks, I just want you to focus on one of those bad habits.
yeah,
Don't think of it, don't worry about changing all of them in one go. Just do one of them at a time, because you'll get so stressed out. Like you said before, if you try and cut everything out at once, it's just not going to work. Like you need one thing at a time. And a sort of a philosophy I've been working on for the past few years is sort of like, you really have to build your foundation,
yeah.
right?
100%.
And over the years, that foundation increases over time. So whatever your baseline currently, as you're just starting, is nothing, right? You eat like shit, and you go to, you don't go to the gym or anything like that. And then you start going twice a week or whatever, and you start sorting out your diet a little bit. A year goes by, and then you start going 3 or 4 times a week, and your diet's even better. Another year goes by, you go even more. Year goes by. Then even when you have a shit week and say you only go twice a week, that your absolute baseline is better than your baseline was before. So you just got to improve whatever your lowest week is. Does that make sense? You always
100%.
improve
Yeah,
whatever your shittest week is, to the point
yeah,
where your shit week is so much better than where you even started.
yeah.
So it's just
Absolutely.
little changes over time. There's no rush. There's no
Yeah,
rush.
no, I completely agree with that. I think that's another mistake that people make, is that, right, I'm going to start going to the gym 5 days a week. It's going to be X amount of hours per day,
Yeah,
and
right.
inevitably, 2 3 weeks later, they're exhausted. They hate it. It's
Yeah,
just broken them down. They're sore, especially when you're first starting. We obviously know that DOMS is going to be a lot worse in those early stages. They know nothing about recovery, etc., etc., and
yeah,
it could turn what could be a really nice long journey into something miserable very, very quickly. And again,
yeah,
you see people fall off very, very fast. I think as well that it's that key thing there about understanding that it's a long-time journey. This is now like a lifestyle change that you're going to make, and it's a
yeah,
good habit that you're going to incorporate into your life. And you're just going to, it's going to be something that you do going forward. And ultimately, you turn it into a habit. I
yeah,
think as well, just realizing that it's okay not to go sometimes. It's okay to step back. Like, you don't have to
yeah.
feel guilty. Like, if you go on holiday, well, I don't work out when I go on holiday. I want to go and enjoy myself.
No, I don't. No,
Like,
I
the
don't.
last 5 years of solid training that I've done is not all going to be undone by 1 week on holiday or whatever
No,
it might
no,
be.
no, no.
And there should never be, what shouldn't be associated with any of this is guilt. And I think as well, it's the same when it comes to like the eating thing. If people are like on a really, really good kind of, they're eating well, they're feeling great, they've got everything in place, and then one day they have a really bad day, they just completely fall off the wall. Big deal. One day doesn't
Yeah, yeah,
undo a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and so on. Like, just
yeah,
take
yeah,
it for what it was, move on. And sometimes you need those little mental resets as well. I know I
yeah,
do,
yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, I think what you were saying before in terms of like training being a lifestyle change is like, I always say this to people. I'm always like, if you think of training as something that you're going to do for like the rest of your life,
Yeah,
right? What's 6 weeks? What's 8 weeks? What's a year, for God's sake? That's such a
yeah,
short amount of time. Don't you?
yeah.
There's no need to rush with any of this stuff. Just take your
No,
time with it. And with what you were just saying just now, there is like a model they teach you when you're going through like PT qualifications and stuff. It's like the pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, maintenance, and relapse. And like the important bit is the relapse bit. Like that is part of the model, like is moving back through some of these stages. It's not like you stay in action and maintenance permanently. There's always a relapse element, and that's the most important stage in terms of you either feel really shit about yourself and then just fall off the wagon and never go back, or be like, okay, I fucked up, I hold myself accountable, and then just get back on the horse and crack on. Like it happens to everybody. Like shit happens in life that's going to affect you and make you have a shit day and just not feel like you want to go to the gym. That happens. But it's at the end of the day, it is just being accountable for your own, for your own life at the end of the day.
I think that's a massive thing. And I think another part of it as well is something that we don't always tell people, but I've started telling people more recently, is like, be selfish. Yep. It's your body. Invest some time in it. Yeah. What is 30 minutes a day? What is an hour a day? Now, I appreciate that when somebody's suddenly spending 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day at the gym, that starts to maybe become unacceptable if they've got other facets to their life.
If they've got children.
Yeah, I know my family wouldn't be happy with that. However, I think just being selfish isn't a bad thing, because what you will hear is, first of all, generally people get support. Then they start to get the benefits from it. So they start to lose weight, or they start to feel better about themselves. They might even start to get more confident as a person. All of these kind of things. And then you'll start to hear negativity from other people. You're spending too much time at the gym. You've lost too much weight. It's like, oh, go on, just have that. Just eat it. Go on, just drink it. Just have whatever it might be. People will always try and pull you off. And I don't necessarily think it's intentional or spiteful. I think it's just human nature. But it's okay. It's okay to say no to those people. It's okay to be half an hour late because you just wanted to finish your workout out and get changed and so on. And I think long term, and going back to the whole thing about having a family, it's kind of like long term, my kids are going to appreciate that going late into my 40s, well into my 50s, my 60s, hopefully my 70s, I'm going to be fit and healthy, and I can still spend valuable time with them. And I think it is really important that people kind of they look at that long term goal of things. It's not just kind of like, right, well, I need to be ready to be on a beach holiday in 3 months' time. It's just kind of like, what about that beach holiday in 30 years' time, when you still want to be active and you still want to be running around and so on. So I think, just taking that small bit of time to invest in yourself is really, really important. And it is selfishness, but I think it's selfless selfishness. If that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. Yeah, I think that's the thing. There's always going to be people that like, unfortunately, that kind of will try and pull you back down to their level at the end of the 100%. Day. Usually it comes from a jealousy standpoint. It's a case of like, well, I'm not doing what you're doing, so I'm gonna like try and rope you back into my my world a little bit. And those people, like, you just gotta block that stuff out. I'm not saying like cut them out of your life altogether. You don't have to just cut them off, but you can totally just say no. Like you can just be like, no, I'm not. I can't do this or whatever on whatever day, because at the end of the day I've got training tomorrow morning, or I've got training. Like it's completely fine. It's fine to be that person, and like you say, be selfish for yourself, because for the betterment of your own health. Like
it's for the better of your health. I think long term it's for the better of your family. I think it's for the better of your friends. Right. I think it does have these impacts, and I do totally agree. I do think that sometimes people aren't being malicious, but then I do agree exactly what you said there, that sometimes it's because people are just bringing you down. They don't do it, so why should you be? Or they didn't have the willpower to stick at it, or they don't find enjoyment from it. A lot of people think that we should all enjoy the same things, and if they don't enjoy it and you do, they'll throw negativity your way. And I think that's just part and parcel of dealing with people. But I just think that once people start to look past that, realize that it's okay to say no sometimes, or just tell people. I do it all the time. I can do that, but I'm training for a marathon, so I've got a 3-hour long run Sunday morning. I'll meet you at lunchtime.
I mean, I've done it. We've done it in terms of like arranging to do this podcast. It's like, okay, I can do these days, but I have got training on some of these days, so I have to account for that, right? So it's like
every single text that pretty much when we arrange it has that caveat in there. I've got to fit it around this, and this. Yeah,
I've got work now, but I have got training around work too. So it's like there is that balance for sure.
And I think that's the thing. I think if you can find that balance where you balance it with life, where you balance it with everything else, it just becomes a part of you, and people then over time learn to expect it. It's like, oh, you're going to come out tonight, or do you need to work out first, and then will you meet us later? It is what it is, and I guess you kind of become that person. But going back to what we kind of said just now, I know two brothers, and one of them during the lockdown got heavily into cycling. And then after that, he joined the running club, and ultimately he moved into like sprint triathlons. His brother did the complete opposite and just sat at home and, I know, lived the lockdown lifestyle. And at the end of it, the brother that had kind of just been sat at home basically doing nothing and eating was very much, oh, you're obsessed. It's like all the negativity you could think of throwing out of it. Instead of going, wow, 2 years ago, you could probably ride 5K. Now you're doing triathlons. It's like, and at the moment, I know the guy is progressing from sprint and he's thinking about doing his first half Ironman. And that's only in like, it's in like less than 4 years from no fitness background. He just got up of his own accord and done it. But the brother is never like, oh, wow, it's so impressive. Well done. I wish I could do that. How can you help me? It's the opposite.
That's a very good example of that kind of thing. It's like, I feel bad for not doing it, so I'm going to make you somehow feel bad for sorting yourself out. It's really weird. Like,
absolutely. But then if I was to do it the other way, so I feel bad when I don't go and train. I love training. I get action.
I feel
good for it. And if I've got a session planned and I miss that for whatever reason, now I know I can do it another day, and I know one session doesn't make a difference. But what I wouldn't want to start doing is then belittling the people I know that don't do it. Like, I wouldn't do it in the opposite direction. I wouldn't I would encourage people to come and work out. I wouldn't belittle them for not working out. It's a strange dynamic, I think. Absolutely.
I definitely, I know you made some few notes for this. I just want to say something initially, but I definitely think you can go from this with what you wrote in our chat. Is I did want to talk about the difference between motivation and discipline. So I think you hear it a lot in terms of like, always hear people say like, how do I stay motivated? And we always have, everyone always has that late night fucking, oh, they're driving on their car on the way home, they're listening to some music that's gassing them up, and they're like, oh my god, I'm going to sort my life out. I'm listening to like Mike Tyson make this sick speech about sorting myself out. I'm feeling it right now. Alarm goes off at 7 a.m. in the morning, like, I can't be fucked. This is the difference. This is the difference between motivation is bullshit, if I'm being perfectly honest. No one feels motivated 100% of the time. This is where discipline comes into play, because discipline is doing what you need to do despite being motivated or not. And more often than not, I find the workouts that I do when I'm like least motivated make me feel the best afterwards. And those are the workouts that turn out to be the most important ones, because they're the ones that make you grow the most. And if you learn to go when you really, really don't want to, it's going to take you to a whole new level than always going when you feel like it. I mean, this is one of the benefits of having a PT sometimes, is they can hold you accountable in that respect. But that is always the difference between motivation and discipline. Motivation you can kind of just ignore. Like it's all about the discipline really, and staying consistent despite how you have to ignore your feelings a lot of the time. You have to just shove that shit aside and just do it.
So motivation is a strange thing, because people kind of talk about it like we've got this inner motivation and we've got levels of motivation, and I can just draw from that motivation and do what I want. That's not how it works. It's not like I have this separate motivational set of energy that when I need to do something, I can just pull from that source, because it doesn't work like that. And like you said there, like ultimately motivation is bullshit. It comes down to discipline. The key thing you said there was accountability. People find accountability in very, very different things. So it might be that you've got an accountability partner. So, for example, you go to the gym with a person, you've kind of said, right, we're going to meet at 5 p.m. 3 days a week. And when you go to the gym for an hour, we're going to work out. And if you miss that session, you're kind of letting that person down. So sometimes people find it like that. I think that's really, really good. But the only time that falls off is when one person can't make the session. What are you going to do now? Are you going to go on your own, or are you just going to bail because they bail? I've kind of found for myself personally, what I do is like really, really small things. So, for example, I always know what I'm doing the day before. Okay, at the moment while I'm training for a marathon, I know, well, weeks in advance what I'm doing. Like pretty much every session is planned out. But the day before every session, I write it down on a post-it note, so I know what I'm doing the next day, and I hold myself accountable to that post-it note. And I know that's a tiny thing, and I've been working out for a long time, but I still do that now because I know tomorrow that that's the minimum amount of exercise that I'm going to do. And I think that does come down to discipline. Yep. So I understand that regardless of what happens tomorrow, I don't care how the day goes, I'm going to find time to do that. And a great example of that was yesterday. I obviously saw you in the gym in the evening. Now, I don't normally train in the evenings because it's just too busy for me. But my first comment was, well, yeah, it's the Easter holidays. I couldn't get it in during the day when I'd normally get it in. I'm here now. And I think you were like, well, you're here. That's the important thing.
Yeah. Right.
And that was it. And it's purely back to that whole thing that yesterday, or the day before, I wrote down what I was going to do as a minimum for that day, and I did it. And I think it is just kind of small things like that people kind of need to do. Now, there are kind of like nuances to, I don't know if it's motivation or kind of the discipline of doing things, but there are kind of like levels to it. So the first thing is like, people are going to be motivated to do something just because there's personal meaning to it. So, for example, they might have signed up to do a half marathon. They might have got a wedding date coming up. There might be some, I don't know, a reunion, and they just want to look absolutely shit hot for it. Whatever it might be, there's some personal meaning for getting up and going to the gym. Something, I don't know, something's triggered them to do it.
Could be a health scare.
Yeah, could be a health
That's
scare.
That's a common one.
Yeah, absolutely. There's all these different things that are going to become that trigger point for you to get up and do it. And I think then what happens is one of two things. You reach that goal and then you drop off and you don't do it until you have another health scare or until a friend convinces you that it's time to do another half marathon or whatever it might be. Or you fall in love with it. You see the positive impact that it's had on your life, and then you start to continue with it. And I think that there is then where people kind of, they move into that sort of mastery phase, which is kind of where they're actually kind of learning to understand the improvements that they're making, and they're starting to monitor those improvements. So as a runner, your 5K time might be coming down. You might be able to run 10K instead of 5K. All of these things you might see. As a lifter, you're going to start to see your weights increase and so on. So you then start to reap some kind of gain from it, and you look forward to hitting that next PR. You start to look forward to hitting that I don't know, that fastest time, whatever it might be. And I think that's a really, really important stage that a lot of people are in, especially when they're kind of quite new to something, because the gains are a lot better at that early stage. Yeah. I, like me now, for example, I tend to time trial a 5K once a year, because the chances of me getting my 5K time much faster or even PRing ever again are very unlikely, because I've hit some seriously fast times in the past. So I'll do that kind of once a year, but that's because I'm more in the next stage of it, which is that kind of flow state of things where I actually understand what I'm doing a little bit more. I understand the effort for the output. So I understand that for me to go and get a 5K PR, I understand how much effort has to go into that. It's not just a case of getting up, going out and smashing out a 5K. It's a case of me actually spending 6 or 7 weeks working to that 5K PR. And I'm at that point where I'm doing that. It's the same as if I wanted to go and PR my back squat. I'm not just going to walk into the gym right now and PR it or match my PR. I'm probably going to have to do a dedicated lifting block to get me to that point. And again, I start to understand what it takes to get to there. And I think this is where kind of making myself accountable by writing down those sort of post-it notes and things like that, the two things kind of tie into each other. So, for example, at the moment, while I'm doing my marathon training, I try to do about 80% of my running at an easy pace and about 20% of it at marathon pace or beyond. So I'm kind of actually putting in a lot of effort. But for those sessions that are going to be hard, I've already written them down. The day before, the week before, whatever it might be, I'm already thinking about that session because I know the effort I need to put into it. Again, it's because I understand it and I'm motivated by that understanding. I look forward to the bit of suffering that I'm going to put myself through for that half hour, that hour, or whatever it might be. And I think this is the key thing. I think this is where people actually start to get something from exercise, and they start to get something from sport. I certainly don't work out for the sake of wanting to lose weight or wanting to reduce my calories for the day. I don't even know how many calories I burn during the day when I sort of work out. I just don't track any of that kind of stuff. For me, it's all about the performance of it. So there's absolutely kind of like different ways that people would look at it. But going right back to that kind of personal meaning, I think that this is the one that people really need to kind of work with, where they know why they're there now in the first place, but what happens when you hit that milestone? Yeah, I don't know, I'm 12 stone, I want to get down to 11 stone. Well, what happens when you're 11 stone? You just stop and wait till you're 12 stone again and carry on?
Yeah, right.
Or would you learn to now maintain that 11 stone? Which is obviously where we've kind of like moved into that sort of mastery phase, where we're actually working with it and understanding kind of how it works and how we can manage it to stay in that sort of that base phase, really.
Yeah, no, you're right. No, I love that. Yeah, because you do get to a point for sure where, because we know exercise improves brain function and makes you feel better.
Yeah.
So it becomes a point where when you don't go, you notice your mood change.
Yes.
And like you miss like the kick of having a workout. Like that's one of the things about going. Like if I go for a holiday for a week, but honestly, by the last day, I'm like, I can't wait to get home and train. Like honest, like you just can't wait to get home and just train, like and stuff like that. And I think it's weird because it sounds stupid, right? Because I've always had people like, because I don't train at this time anymore, but I used to like train, wake up at 6 a.m. 5 days a week and go train before work or whatever. People always used to ask me like, how do you do that, or like, how do you do it? It's like I don't know, I just do it. Like there isn't really like I can't really give you any like secret. My alarm goes off and I get out of bed.
So
like,
one of the things
really a secret to this shit. You just do it.
You just
I know
do it.
Stupid,
now one of the things
you just
saying to that that people said to me is like, how do you get up? Because I've been through that phase as well, especially when I was fighting. I was getting my early morning session, then a daytime, and then an evening session, because that's all I was doing, and I was coaching in between. But people always ask me like, how were you getting up and doing that first session? Well, the truth is, I hated getting out of bed. But it sucks getting out of bed at 5 a.m. It sucks getting out of bed at 11 a.m. I love being in bed. It doesn't matter what time of day it is. It's rubbish getting up. And that's for me personally. So it is just a case of exactly like you said.
It sounds stupid because you just like there's like I say to people all the time, it's like I don't want to get out of bed. Like you said, I don't want to get out of bed either. I don't want to get out of bed. It's fucking comfy and nice and warm. I don't want to get up. It's cold outside. I don't want to get up. But this is where the discipline comes back. But you have to just do it. And it does get easier over time, it does just get easier. But like you do just have to do it. Like there isn't a secret to this shit. You do condition yourself
to it, and then of course it gets easier naturally when you start to see those progressions. When suddenly you can get up at 5 a.m. and rather than running 5K in 30 minutes, you're running 5K in 25 minutes. Or rather than running 5K, you're running 8K, whatever it might be. Or you're getting up and you're going to the gym, and as you're leading, other people are coming in, but you've got that feeling and of that sense of well-being that I've done it. I am done for the day. I've smashed this out now. I can get on with anything. And you probably, by getting up at like 5 a.m. or whatever it might be and doing that session, you've probably done the hardest thing you're going to do that day. You're probably now set up to deal with work,
it sets your day up. It sets your day up really well, and it's better to get it out of the way. Honestly, that's how I feel. Like I hated evening training. Like I'd always get up,
I still do
it, and then when I finish work, then I can just go home.
The time's yours.
But I can't do that now, unfortunately, because if I get up earlier, I open the gym. So like I can't go to the gym before the gym opens because I open the gym. So like I have no choice to train after work some days.
Absolutely.
But,
absolutely.
Or if I'm closing, I can't train after. So I
train after.
I'm like kind of fucked.
When I was fighting and coaching out of the gym, that's exactly what we would do. Is like fighters would just get up, go there early before the public. We'd get our sessions in, and like that, it was good fun, and it's a really, really nice way of doing it. But that's a luxury place to be in. You've also got in that situation as well. You also have that luxury of not having to deal with work and all of those other things that come with it. Work was coaching, which is arguably work.
I mean,
but I think so. I think what's advice? So going right back to the very beginning there, like people first rocking up.
I mean, I think it's difficult that like at least where I work, we do offer people programming for free and stuff like that. And I guess in like if you go to Pure Gym, they won't give that to you. So like I think it's hard for people to be, oh shit, well I'm not going to have all that help and advice. If you do have a friend you can go with, ask them if you can go with them and start joining with them, because they'll hopefully be able to show you some things anyway. Obviously it's hard, you don't know whether the friend is going to give you the right shit, but
Yeah,
it's better than nothing.
it is better than nothing.
Yeah, and it's like, whose programs do you follow, who do you follow for advice? Like there is a lot to it, and it's like, how often do I go, what exercises should I actually do, how much cardio compared to strength training should I do, what's the differences between the two? Like this is where like we need another episode really. There, and like at the end of the day, a lot of people do kind of need like, okay, well I'm going to the gym now, and I've maybe been going for a bit, but I'd like to take it to like another level, like we were talking about before. So like, where do I kind of go? But at the end of the day, it's all goal dependent. There's tons of variables that go into that too. So there's a shitload of stuff that really like, and variables that we could go in and dive down into with this stuff.
I think as well, like the other thing, again, going back to the point we sort of mentioned just now, is like that whole sort of frequency of training. When people sort of first join the gym or they first start running, what would you suggest would be a good amount of times to start per week?
I think,
for how long?
Yeah, I mean, I generally say to people when they first start, in terms of like, because we generally do, I'm kind of more on for the benefits if you're a newbie for resistance training before cardio, personally. I just think it gives you more of a broad spectrum of benefits. But sometimes I do like, say, I usually do like an hour. It's generally like a good rule of thumb. But you can always just do 45 minutes of weight, 15 minutes of cardio, 40 minutes of weights, 20 minutes of cardio, or something like that. It just may be a case of the cardio portion is a little bit more intense because it's shorter. But then again, if you're doing, say, 2 weight sessions a week with a little bit of cardio, a good extra to that would be just getting daily steps in. That's always an easy one. Well, not always easy, but like it's an easy way of kind of doing. If you've got a dog, that always helps. So daily steps is a good one, or just maybe a separate cardio session in the week for an hour or something like that. It could be honestly as simple as that. You can see plenty of gains initially just doing 2 weight sessions a week, like period.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think so. Right now, I do 3 weight sessions a week. Neither of them last an hour because, again, training for the marathon, so they're divided up with cardio work. But yeah, I would absolutely agree. 2 dedicated strength sessions per week, and then if somebody is starting to think about what cardio should I do or that kind of thing, then I would probably have 1 dedicated session in there a week, just to sort of like
make it whatever the fuck you want as well.
Feels. Yeah, 100%.
Cardio, make it whatever the hell you want.
Yeah,
like, honestly,
100%. When I'm not training for a run specific, I do everything. Yeah, a lot of rowing, a lot of kind of cross training and things like that. And I think there's benefit to everything, but any of those things that are just going to start to use your aerobic system, that it's going to be absolutely kind of key. And I think what naturally happens then is people are going to gravitate to one or two things. They're going to start to gravitate towards the weight training, or they're going to start gravitating towards the cardio, or they are going to figure out that kind of hybrid of both, and figure out a way to kind of put the 2 together. So my training very much works around that. I get a lot of mileage in per week, but I obviously do a lot of strength training per week, unlike a lot of runners who are just purely run.
I definitely do both. It's just whatever the ratio is. Like, you can do 80-20 either way, but I would just make sure that like you do, like, doing 100% of one thing is probably not the best idea.
No,
I would do both if you can. But things are like, if we're to be fair, one cardio equipment I would say was probably the best bang for your buck is the stair climb. Not gonna lie. You can get more out of that thing in like 10 minutes than you can half an hour on a treadmill. That thing is a beast of a machine. So if I had to nominate one like at the top, I would say probably the stair climb.
I think with the machines that are in the gym, the stair climb and the rower are 2 that I would gravitate towards the most.
Right.
Rowing for me is just something I've always kind of enjoyed, and it does tie in with some of the other sports I do, so kind of like the hybrid racing, things like that. But that's on a personal level. I need to do it because it's part of that. I think all of them as well, they're a step away from training. They're a step away from the treadmill. Even now, I hate running on the treadmill. I use it every week as a tool because it's convenient and it's right there. Yeah,
it's
and
so boring.
I use it for my short recovery runs, 5 or 6K at a time, or I'll break it into circuits, so like 200 meters on or something else, that kind of thing.
Stuff.
But again, that's because I've got that kind of advanced knowledge and that confidence to start doing those things. I don't expect someone on their first day into the gym to do those kind of things. But again, I do think there is that initial phase of just finding what works for you. I would always absolutely say to someone, it's like, do you enjoy it? Would you rather stand on the treadmill, getting nothing out of it, going through the motions for 30 minutes, hating it, feeling miserable about your life, or jump onto the bike for 30 minutes, maybe not smash the same amount of calories if that's your goal, but you enjoyed it. You got a sense of purpose, a sense of well-being from it. I would argue in those early stages that that's more important.
For
the
sure.
one that you're enjoying is what's going to keep you coming back, as opposed to just going on there and just like, life.
No, you're right. You're right. No, you're right. I think, and class is always a good one too. Classes are good, and if you can find a sport that you also enjoy, that kind of covers cardio most of the time. I don't think there really is hard for me to think of like a singular sport that's like as good as going to the gym. But I guess like stuff like CrossFit maybe, but that's such a hybrid sport anyway. Because that covers a lot of ground. But like it's like, you know, if you're playing football or like squash or whatever, like that's not going to give you the benefits of strength training. Like there isn't, even climbing does give you, it's a lot of strength based, but even then you need to supplement training. Like every sport needs supplement gym training, every single one. There isn't a sport that doesn't have that. So it's
I see that all the time in running. I can't get my head around the amount of runners that don't do strength work. And using the argument that I run trails once a week, that is not strength work. Like, yes, there's an element of support work in there because you're using different muscles, etc., but that is not dedicated strength training. And now I don't expect every runner to go out there and start like deadlifting 200 kilos and squatting 150 and all of it. Like, of course not. But there is a place in there to just start bulletproofing your body, to start making
bulletproof your knees, your hips, your ankles. And
the extra mobility that comes from it. So like being a good squatter, for example, and like you say, the mobility that comes from it, hip mobility, the knee work, the ankle work, if you can keep flat feet, all of these things have such a positive impact on everything else. And for me personally, it's like, I think if I had to right now, if I was asked which one I was going to drop first, it would be the running. I would much rather be going to the gym 3 times a week and doing the strength, and I would drop the running, and I would get more long-term enjoyment out of that and more longevity out of it than I would running like 80k a week or 100k a week.
It's much more fun.
Because
at least
ultimately,
anyway.
It is for me. Because the other thing is, I know that if I was to go to the gym, let's say 4 or 5 times a week, and all I did was lift and some metcons or something like that, or I run 80 or 100k a week, I know that come the time I'm 50 or 60, I'm going to be a lot lighter, a lot more broken down, a lot more worn out than I am if I'm just following a healthy strength program over that same period of time. Now, obviously, that isn't a situation that I want to be in, and I don't want to make that choice. But I know which one for me I would consider from a longevity point of view. There's absolutely no doubt about it.
For sure.
So what do you kind of think then? What sort of lifting do you think people should be doing when they first rock up to the gym or once they start to get confident?
I think generally we start a lot of people with machine-based stuff, just machine-based, because obviously it takes the stability component is completely taken away, which obviously there's some nuance to this. And it kind of just gets people's muscles working, right? Obviously I do want to implement some free weight with people at some point, because to be fair, this is generally if I'm just making a program for someone for them to crack on, it'd be different if I was doing PT, and if I'm with them all the time, I would generally probably start with more free weight. But because with free weight, there's a little bit more technical aspect involved. If I'm doing PT with someone, I can focus on that and I can help them constantly, whereas if I'm just making a program for someone to crack on with, I'll generally just do more machine-based stuff, at least to start with, because that stability component is taken away and they can kind of just focus on the machine itself. So generally I think machines are a great place to start if you just are a bit more, you can kind of sit down and do your own thing, and they're a little bit more comfortable. I think just like mentally you can kind of just crack on. I know some of them are a bit daunting, like the leg curl. People always get fucked up with the seated leg curl. It's a bitch of a machine, but once you get used to it, it's like I always say this to people when I promise you this machine is so fucking good for your hamstrings. It's worth like the pain of just figuring it out. It's like the best hamstring machine, period, and probably the best hamstring exercise, period, is the seated leg curl. So machines are a good place to start. but you don't have to start there if you want to. If you've got someone who does free weight, crack on with doing free weight. If you want to start, there is nothing wrong. I hate there's a big fear mongering aspect for sure. Like people will try and make out that doing a barbell back squat is going to kill you, or doing a deadlift is going to kill you. Like everyone has to start somewhere.
Yep,
So you
agree.
can, if you don't have to necessarily start with a barbell on your back, you can do squats with a box, kettlebell, dumbbell, some sort of goblet or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then start with a barbell back squat with, like, if you've got a 10-kilo barbell in your gym, like we do. So it's super light on your back, and you can just spend like 8 weeks purely just focusing on tech. There's a lot of nuance you can go into that specific exercise and learning how to squat. Generally, yeah, looking at here, there's tons of stuff I had listed down. So frequency of training, we covered a little bit. So twice a week. I think you probably agree with that for strength training.
I think starting off,
balancing of cardio and strength, depending on what your goal is and depending on what you want, but you can make it 50-50 to start with, no problem. Compound versus isolation exercises. So I think it's good to have a mix of both. A lot of people would say to start with, you can just give people compounds because like they're just going to get growth from it anyway, and it's best to cover all bases. But I think it's kind of, I don't think isolation exercises can sometimes feel quite nice. Like a bicep curl feels pretty fucking nice. I can't lie, and that's a pure isolation exercise, or a tricep push down.
Absolutely.
So you don't necessarily have to just do compounds. You can mix in some isolations in there, and that's fine. I think a common one, I think you might have some points on this, is like, say someone is overweight and they want to build muscle. Like, do they lose weight first or do they build muscle first? And that's a weird one, because I think initially you can find that, especially in those stages, you're kind of in a Goldilocks zone where you can probably lose weight and build muscle at the same time.
Agree.
But at the end of the day, I would try and just do that initially. Like, just put yourself in, like, I'm not necessarily saying you have to count calories for this, but just put yourself in a little bit of a deficit. Just a very light deficit, like not much. Like I'm talking like 200-300 calories below your BMR, something like that, or at least your working calorie day, whatever it is.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
But yeah, I mean, in terms of, say you're like a 60-year-old woman, like, I mean, like, where do you start? And that's another aspect. Like, depending on what your age is another aspect.
That's an absolutely huge one, because everybody's going to have different needs. We know the 18-year-old lad who is completely influenced by Instagram is going to have different needs to, like, say, the 60-year-old woman. And I think that is a really, really key point. And this is where, kind of going back to things like the low impact cardio is probably going to be a benefit. This is where using machines is going to be a benefit. I'm not suggesting that a 60-year-old woman on her first visit to the gym sticks a 20-kilo bar on her back and starts squatting, or we crack a couple of 25 plates on and get a deadlift.
I'd get fucking fired if I did that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she'd probably shock us all, but But I think the client is absolutely a huge thing. And I think understanding the person and then going right back to what their personal needs are, what are they trying to get out of it. If it is just a case of that 60-year-old woman, like, she's just retired, she's spent the last 30 years working behind a desk, and all she wants to do is just start moving a little bit more efficiently than she has for the last 30 years. And there's lots of low impact things she can do. There's lots of machines where you can just adjust the weight and get it comfortable, get her legs moving, get those muscles moving in the way that they didn't move before. And that's a person that I'm not going to suggest that person starts doing box jumps and so on. Like, there's just no need for that.
To be fair, though, there is a lot of this is when we do an episode on the elderly. I want to go into this. I'll just briefly mention it now. I've done there's a couple of studies that have been published in terms of, like, velocity based training for elderly. So a lot of beforehand, it's been seen as something that's quite dangerous. Just like moving light objects fast is pretty much what velocity based training is. For anyone who doesn't know, and I think, because, like, with the power equation, right? So force times velocity is the power equation. So if you want to increase the power of someone, we need to do high force stuff, so moving heavy things slowly, or velocity stuff, moving light stuff really fast. So that velocity component isn't necessarily looked at, especially with the elderly. It's more about force. So I think but I think a lot of the time, in terms of when things go wrong with elderly people, it's quick response stuff. So it's like, either you're driving a new car and you've got to react quickly, or it's you're about to fall over and you've got to catch yourself quickly. So I think that velocity component, I think that with the data that's been suggested, is very important for that kind of demographic. So especially not straight away, like, don't do it straight. I'm talking like once you've been going for a good few months. But velocity based training is definitely something for everybody for sure. But I mean,
that's actually something really interesting. Yeah, and I think that's absolutely something that like is worth diving into at some point, because there's some
Yeah, for
really
sure.
interesting points there. You can absolutely see
Yeah.
the benefits, especially there we talk about like real world situations where
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
being able to
Especially for
just
that age group, for
turn that
sure.
on is
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely massive. And there's a
yeah,
great example there, like where you've had that woman who's just retired, who's been sat there for like 30 years. That's the kind of person that is going to benefit from those things. But yeah,
yeah, yeah,
absolutely. Day one, that isn't what they should be doing. It's again, even for that person, it's about instilling that confidence, making the gym or whatever it might be, club, the class, whatever it is, making it a welcoming place, making it somewhere comfortable that they feel safe and that they can come to, and then start to develop those skills. And of course, over time, that then you start to integrate these kind of new things to them, going right back to what we kind of said just now about like kind of getting under the bar and learning those skills. Up until about 3 weeks ago, just because I want to avoid anything that potentially injure me as I get closer to a marathon, I do a lot of Olympic lifting. But when I initially started Olympic lifting, it was weeks of just using a broom and nailing those movements. Then it was weeks of just doing it with the bar, and it was a long time before I started even thinking about piling weight on, because it was always getting the technique absolutely dialed and then starting to increase the weight over time. And I think this is the mistake that a lot of people make when they first join anything, is just like racking on all the weight or running as fast as they can. They want to do everything at that high standard. And I think it goes right back to what we said at the very beginning there, which is just kind of like thinking about this as a long journey. If a brand new person wants to take up Olympic lifting tomorrow, it's going to be weeks and weeks before they're getting under a bar confidently, and it's going to be probably months before they're actually starting to put some decent weight on that bar. And I think that's the same if it goes to from like a basic lift point of view, squats, deadlifts. You're certainly not just going on your first set of although I have seen it, but you shouldn't be on your first set of deadlifts just throwing on the biggest
cranking it
weight
out. Yeah,
possible and busting yourself up forever. It's again, it's just slow progression, and I think that's the biggest mistake that
yeah,
most people kind of make with any of these things. Is it's probably goes right back to what we said as well. Is that you look around the gym and you see other people doing this, so why shouldn't I be doing that? And it's really
yeah,
easy to get sapped up into that environment.
yeah.
But
I
I think that
think
the
I.
best.
Sorry, I was think just expanding on that. I think in terms of technique stuff, I think some good general rules of thumb for like every exercise that you do is to emphasize control.
Yeah,
So don't be throwing the weight around pretty much. So load management and control of weight are the two things that's going to make everything a bit nicer on your joints and your muscles going forward. So I generally follow with new people as like the 2-for-1 rule. So like 2 seconds for the eccentrics, that'd be the lowering portion, and then 1 second for the concentric. Generally speaking, is the general rule of thumb that I follow.
yeah,
And yeah, and load management, like you were saying before, is very important. So just gradually increasing weight over time. One, that'll be nicer for your body to handle, and two, it will make it so your plateau, like your top shelf, sort of eases up as you go. So you're not, if you go too soon, what happened? You're going to hit that shelf a lot sooner. Whereas you can sort of push it like this if you're going up gradually.
agree. Yeah,
And it's much nicer. But there is always going to be a time where you reach a plateau. I don't give a fuck what anyone says. Like you
no,
will hit
no,
a plateau at some point. Growth generally is like this. That's generally how it goes. So
yep.
first year is generally like that. It's brilliant, and
First
then
year's the
everything just
best.
tapers
Yeah.
off. Yeah, it just tapers off after a
Yeah,
while.
I've said that to a lot of people that I've kind of like been coaching and running and things like that. Is that I wish I was back at the start of my kind of running journey, because it's
Yeah,
so exciting, because you
it's
get
blessed.
so
Yeah,
good so quick,
yeah,
and you
yeah,
start to
yeah.
see those differences. And it's amazing that, like, I don't know, let's take someone who's never run before, and over a 3-month period, they're going to go from 30 minutes of run walking, maybe 20 minutes of that might even be walking, through to being able to run for 30 minutes solidly. But once they can run 30 minutes solidly, it's about, right, well, can I run 5K in 30 minutes? From now, can I run 5K in 25 minutes? And those progressions come in really, really quick. For me now, if I wanted to go and PR my 5K, for example, it's like I'm talking about knocking a second off of
The
it.
second off.
I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah,
talking about knocking minutes off of it. It's the kind of
yeah,
the gains I'm going to get now are so minimal. And even for me to
yeah.
get that 1 or 2 seconds, like I said just now, that's weeks of training going into
Yeah,
that.
yeah. It's the same with
Where,
powerlifting PRs. It's
yeah,
like pushing up
absolutely.
1.25 kilos could be the goal. Like, actually, to
Yeah,
be fair, I got a new box jump PR today. That was the good thing that happened today, and that
nice.
was literally like 3/4 of an inch. Like
Yeah.
that was
But again, how
you
much
know,
difference
but it
does that
felt
make
good
when you're
though.
high?
It felt
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like that is the difference between, because basically the problem was, so my previous record was 51 inches on the boxes.
Nice.
So, and I hadn't tried it in a long time. So I basically was just trying to see if I could still do 51. And the problem is with the boxes, I could only push it up by 3 inches using the boxes. So I got
Yes.
like the red mats,
Yeah.
and I just put like a red mat underneath it, and it
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
pushed it up by like maybe 3/4 of an inch. So I just used that, and I was like, okay, so I pushed it just a little bit, but I've got a new
It's
PR
enough.
from it. So that's good.
But
Yeah, it's
that's what
enough.
happens is initially.
Yeah,
So if you think like the first time you probably did a box jump, it was probably on an 18-inch box. And
yeah,
then you
right.
probably progress to like 24,
Yeah,
32, and so on. And then it gets to a point where those increments are no longer 6 inches at a time. They are exactly
yeah.
like you said now.
Like an inch or two. Yeah,
They're down to like
yeah,
centimeters.
yeah,
And that's what happens is like the better you get at something, the smaller those progressions become. And that's where it goes right back to what we said just now, where you're kind of you're in that flow because you understand it. You now understand what it's going to take for you to get like 52.5.
yeah. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
the effort you're going to have to put into that, in the same way
yeah,
that I understand what it takes me to chip off a few seconds from my 5K. And that's, and again, it all comes with experience and it all comes with the knowledge of doing these things. But yeah, that early stage where those gains are absolutely massive, like where people go from like barely being able to lift the 20K bar on their back to being able to squat their own body weight. And that will come very quick. But going from
yeah,
being able
yeah.
to
It does
squat their own
actually.
body weight to 100 kilos is probably actually good. And well, unless they weigh more than 100 kilos, but
Yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah, like
yeah,
but like that progression from, let's say, 70-kilo guy wanting to get up to 100 kilos guy, absolutely achievable. But that's going to be a lot slower than going from bar to 70. There's absolutely
yeah.
no doubt
No,
about
you're
that.
right.
And I think that's another point where people can quite easily lose that motivation. They either get motivated by those small gains, or they start to drop off again because it's like I've reached my plateau. I've got as good at this as I could possibly get.
Yeah,
The way I
yeah. I
start to
mean,
look at it,
sorry, carry on,
sorry,
carry on.
yeah, I was just saying, yeah, the last thing that I do now is, as I'm getting older, is I'm at a point now where I try to focus on not going backwards, but not losing my gains. So talking
Yeah,
about that
right.
5K
Yeah,
PR,
yeah,
it's like, can I PR this year the same as what can I match last year's? Yeah, and if I can't, as long as I suddenly haven't lost like 5 minutes off of it, then I'm in a good place.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so you're
yeah,
constantly,
yeah.
you're still working forward. You're just working with what you have now.
Yeah. In terms of like some trying to just give some people some more details just in case they do want some other stuff. I think in terms of programming for strength training, I think try and, if you're just doing 2 days, just make them both full body. I think it's better
Agree.
to work out
Yeah.
things twice a week.
Yes.
And just try and cover, like, make sure you're balancing that over your upper and lower body, obviously.
Yeah.
So maybe pick like 3 or 4 exercises per half.
I
And
would say, yeah.
upper body push and a pull. Make sure with your legs you're giving something for your quads and your glutes. So generally that might be something involving extending your hip and flexing your knee. Oh, sorry, extending the knee. And then if you're doing hamstring exercise, make sure you're doing another hip extension or flexing your knee exercise. And then upper body, yeah, give yourself a push for your chest and your shoulders, triceps, and a pull for your back. And then something maybe as an overhead press as well might be good as well, just because it's a very weak area for a lot of people. People are always surprised when they come in the gym and they do the shoulder press machine for the first time. They can only do 2.5 keys. It's like, yeah, like, because you're not pushing shit over your head in daily life.
How
Like,
often are you doing that?
doing
Yeah,
like this,
absolutely.
like it doesn't happen. So
No, I
yeah,
completely agree. I think the
yeah,
point there about the kind of the balance, I totally agree. 2 sessions a week, full body. I think you just don't need to be getting bogged down by like kind of the splits and all of that kind of thing. Just work
yeah,
your
yeah,
full
yeah.
body.
They
I totally
all
agree.
honestly, they all achieve. You can achieve
Yeah,
results doing any split. Honestly, like there
agree.
is no magic split to this. A PPL or an upper lower or specific body part day, it makes no fucking difference. Like
Yeah,
at the end of the day, when like you equate volume, really doesn't
yeah,
make that much difference.
completely agree.
So
Completely
don't
agree.
worry
And I
about
think
that shit.
just finding the balance top to bottom, like you say, upper body, lower body, and I think balance front to back, push and pull. And I think
Yeah,
you probably can't go too far wrong with that. You'll ultimately work everything. You'll be working the front and back
yeah,
of your
yeah,
legs, the front and back of your body, front and back of your arms. top of
Yeah.
your body, the bottom of your body, and I think you'll be in a really, really good place. That then is when you then just start to incorporate some of those more complex lifts over time. So you might replace a leg press machine with a squat, and that squat might just be a goblet squat, or it might just be, I don't know, you might progress onto deadlifts, but it probably could be like suitcase deadlifts with some dumbbells or things like this. And then you just over time just start to progress into the more complex variations of things with confidence. But yeah, absolutely agree. Right back at the beginning.
Just to give some people, like a couple of people they could follow, if they want to just to learn more about, not necessarily I guess a lot of these people might offer quite advanced techniques, but like the specific in terms of if they just want to learn technique from these people and some basic principles. I think people like Dr. Mike Israetel is brilliant. Paul Carter is brilliant. Jeff Nipper does some very good stuff.
Yes, absolutely.
People like that are good to follow. Danielle Webster, if you're a lady, she does some really good stuff. I'm trying to think of some other people. There's a guy called Sean, I can't remember his surname now. He's very good. Chris Beardsley, all these people are on Instagram. Alan Aragon, I want to say, for diet stuff. Brad J. Schoenfeld as well, he's brilliant. So there's tons of people there if people want to give those people a follow just for some basic advice. They post really, really good shit, really good stuff. And obviously me.
Yeah, come
and
to
me
us
as well. Coach.callum on Instagram. Give me a follow. Callum with one L, I just want to state that now.
How many people won't find
name
you?
Wrong. Yeah.
Perfect. I think that's probably a good place to end that one, because we covered quite a bit there. I think any one of those things we could dive into individually.
1,000,000%, yeah.
But I think there's so many things that we've kind of covered off there. So yeah,
yeah.
Good place. Nice one.
Right. Well, see you next week, everybody.